Very familiar to Dr. Michael Oren, former ambassador of Israel to the United States, former deputy minister. He's like a road tour of a rock and roll band. I don't know where he is today, but I'm glad he's back with us. Good morning, Dr. Oren. Thank you for being back. Yesterday, I mentioned to you the book, Israel, A Concise History of a Nation Reborn. It's by Daniel Gordis, not Daniel Oren. You're on my mind so much. I'm sorry about that. But reading it today, I got three segments with you, and I want to discuss three things. The weight of history on Israel, what happens in Gaza afterwards, and what happens in Gaza afterwards. First, the weight of history. In Gordis, it's become obvious to me that Israel goes from crisis to crisis in its 75-year history and always overcorrects and doesn't always anticipate how evil can be. Am I right about that? Are you still living with the burdens of 1973 and being surprised? And will this surprise cripple Israel for a decade or more?
Good morning, Hugh. Good morning from Houston. Tomorrow's in Philadelphia. The day after you get me in Denver. We're almost finished with this. If I can finish this, I can do a presidential campaign. Good morning. Wow, a lot of heavy questions on the morning. Listen, I'll start with this. You know Jeff Goldberg, the Atlantic. And every time we had a bout with Hamas, every time we had one of these small wars with Hamas, Jeff would call me up and said, "I get the tactic, but what's the strategy?" And my response to him was, "Jeff, you don't get it. The tactic is the strategy." What does it mean? All right, we're surrounded by a sea of people who hate us and want to destroy us, a true existential threat. I don't know if the United States ever faced this existential threat. We face it on a daily basis. And we have to attack. We have to fight back. And every couple of years, we have to try to convince these people who want to destroy us that trying to destroy us is not a good idea, that it's going to cost them mightily when they try it. And you do this again and again. With the Egyptians, we had to do it, 4 times? And after the 4th time, a leader came along, Anwar Sadat, and said, "Okay, enough of this. This isn't working. We're not throwing these people in the sea. Let's make peace with them." The Jordanians tried to do it twice. And so along came King Hussein and said, "Okay, enough of this. We're going to try to do something different. We're going to make peace." And the same thing true with the Abraham Accord countries. Now, there's some people who haven't gotten the memo, particularly the Palestinians. And so we're going to have to keep, every couple of years, we're going to have to remind them, the way we're reminding them now, that attacking us is not a good idea. And, people say to me all the time, "But aren't you going to be creating more terrorists? Aren't you going to be creating more terrorists?" I mean, if you had that logic, the United States never would have World War II. Hey, we're not going to go against Nazi Germany. You're only going to create more Nazis. Right? Yes, maybe, but we're going to have to remind them. Now, that's the tactic. What's the strategy? The strategy is, in between these wars, we developed one of the most successful nation states on the planet. We don't stay in one place. They stay in one place. They stay in the gutter. But we developed the state of Israel, and that's the strategy. And the strategy is to keep on developing the state of Israel, to keep on building this extraordinary nation state, which is successful in every field you can imagine, and keep on reminding them every couple of years. Now, this is a particularly severe bout. It's a very severe bout. And now on to your second question. So now you know that the tactic is the strategy, and there's no magic fix there. It may take who knows how many generations. But where were we surprised? Yes, we were surprised. You know why we were surprised? Because we, like you, are human beings. We're part of the same civilization. And our civilizations have a hard time wrapping our heads around pure evil. It has to really stare us. Look, I talk about that great line by General Eisenhower, the fury of an aroused democracy. Look how long it took for the United States to be aroused to evil in the world. And we're very similar. We're part of the same civilization. And here I was working on Gaza. I was in charge of Gaza for the government. And, I'm dealing with Gaza. Even I didn't understand the depth of the evil of Hamas. I don't think any rational human being could understand or predict the pure bestial behavior of these terrorists on October 7th.
Oh, every time I think they've hit bottom, they dig a basement and fall into it. They showed the 45-minute video to the children hostages. That's how depraved they are. And I asked Haviv Rediger this morning, is Sinwar mad? Is he insane? And he says he's not. What do you think?
No, he's not. I agree with Haviv. I put it this way. The Hamas terrorists did things that not even the Nazis did. Remember, the Nazis, kept their final solution secret. They wouldn't let it be filmed because they understood that even the most vicious Jew hater in Nazi Germany would have a trouble with the gas chambers, would have covers with the execution pits. So they wouldn't let it be filmed. These guys, the terrorists, they live streamed their atrocities. They knew they were playing to a very excited audience. They were calling up their parents and saying, "Look, Mom, Dad, I just killed 10 Jews with my own hands. Aren't you proud of me?" Can you imagine any other civilization like that? Even Nazi Germany. Even Nazi.
I got to ask you about historians. You are a historian's historian. People don't know this. They may have forgotten it. You've won all the prizes. You've taught at Princeton. You're Dr. Oren because you're a PhD in history. Yesterday, Tom Holland, whom I have a great deal of respect for and have interviewed, introduced a podcast he was doing with William Dalrymple, who I have a lot of respect for. He's a great historian. And William Dalrymple was going to talk how Arthur Balfour is the original problem here. That is so stupid. How do people come to, the Romans are the original problem here. They destroyed the Second Temple. But what do you do with your colleagues in the field of history who are so propagandized that they can't get back to their professional credibility?
Yeah. Listen, it's called reductionism, right? You're always going to find something that was the original cause. What was it? Yeah, I guess the Romans, they changed the name of the country to Palestine, if you remember. Jesus never heard the word Palestine. Jesus was crucified 100 years before the Romans changed the name. I always feel it's kind of strange that people refer to, Palestine in the times of Jesus. It didn't happen. You can always look for first causes, but it could have been the other way around. Think about the alternative history. If the Arabs had welcomed the Jews to the Middle East, and if the Jews had been able to share with this very backward part of the world, part of what we had learned over the course of centuries in terms of science, in terms of development, in terms of water reclamation, think about how much that all would have changed. But instead, they waged war on us. They simply did. The Palestinians hold the world record, Hugh, for people who have been offered a two-state solution and have turned it down with violence. Not just turned it down. That was the British offer in 1937, the UN offer in 1947, the American-Israeli offer of 2000, 2001, the Israeli order of 2008. It goes on and on and on. One has to sort of, at some point, you have to sort of say to yourself, wait a minute, they're telling us something. Why is nobody listening? And you could give a completely different history based on the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration, instead of being the cause of all the evil, could have been yet another great opportunity missed by the Palestinians.
We'll come back to that in the first part of our break. I'm going to talk to you about post-war, when Sinwar is gone and they've all left. What about demilitarization? And when you come back, we're going to talk about what about rebuilding and who administers it. But before we do, the Hatzalah campaign that you are working for, rescueisrael.org, how is it faring?
It is amazing. The outpouring of love and support for the people of Israel, for the health and caring of people of Israel, because that's what Hatzalah does, has just been so rewarding for me, Hugh, coming at such a dark time. Now, I understand that you have contributed to it. We've had other people who aren't Jewish contributing to the Jewish community that I meet. Everyone's frightened. Everyone's scared. I've come to a very radical conclusion that that the Holocaust never really ended. I mean, the gas chambers ended, Nazi Germany ended, but not the mass dehumanization of Jews, which is what's going on.
I think they've miscalculated, Ambassador. I think Sinwar has miscalculated completely on the impact of a massacre on the civilized world. We may not see it because social media is being manipulated by Iran and by Hamas, but I don't think anyone can come away other than feeling grief for and allegiance to Israel if they're at all balanced.
Well, that's the big question. How many people actually are balanced and have moral clarity? And that's a rarity today. That's why I call my Substack Clarity, by the way. It's the characteristic that I most admire in thinkers and in statespeople is clarity, because it's so rare. How often you have Haviv on your show?
Yes.
He's a clear thinker.
Oh my!
Yeah, he's amazing. He's a clear thinker, and they're rare. You know a clear thinker when you meet one too. It's amazing. This guy sees. I'll quote you. I'll be unusual. I'll be a Jew who'll quote from the New Testament. One of my favorite lines is from Corinthian, where Paul writes that we all see through the world as if through a glass darkly, because Roman glass was dark. And there are very few people who can see through a glass darkly and see the realities of the world.
Well, I think you and Haviv are the two that I go to for that. We're going to come back during the break. The Salem News Channel's got to take a break. The radio network's got to take a break. I'll put this part on the podcast. Stay tuned, America. Dr. Oren will be back after the break here on The Hugh Hewitt Show. I'm back with Dr. Oren. This will air on the podcast. Dr. Oren, I have the Sapir article that you've written for their special edition, October and November. And I don't know if that's available online yet. I've actually never heard of Sapir before. Tell me what Sapir is.
Sapir is a journal edited by Bret Stephens. And it's a very high level article for people who are involved in Israel, involved in Jewish affairs. It's really meant almost for communal leaders to get a really sense, and it's an excellent platform.
Well, I had Marsha Blackburn on this morning, and the senator had not had any briefing from the State Department about what happened after Gaza is liberated from Hamas. And I don't know that the State Department has even thought to read your article. Do you think anyone is thinking about how to prevent a repeat of Hamas returning in any way, shape, or form to Gaza?
I hope so. I mean, there's lots of talk in Washington about moving the Palestinian Authority to Gaza. And that's probably the best prescription you're going to have for getting Hamas back, right? Because you remember the Palestinian Authority, deeply corrupt, deeply unpopular, lasted about a year and a half as the de facto government of Gaza before it was overthrown by Hamas. Remember, in 2007. So, and that's with tremendous American backing. Oh my God, there was a whole military mission there, the Dayton mission, that tried to train the Palestinian police. That training, gave them about a week of resistance. So I think that's not a great idea. So this article, I have an article out today in Sapir that talks about the day after. And it looks like this. First of all, you have to demilitarize the Gaza Strip. No more rockets, no more rocket factories. You have to internationalize the Gaza Strip. It's not just Israel's problem and Egypt's problem. It is a global problem. It's certainly a Western problem. That's what those American aircraft carriers are doing in the Middle East now, because Gaza is an international problem. You should have an international force there with a very large inter-Arab component. You should have a cordon sanitaire around Gaza.
What is the Philadelphia line that you referred to? I've never heard of that before.
Philadelphia was the line dividing Egypt from the Gaza Strip.
And Israel maintained that at one time? Israel patrolled that?
Until the withdrawal, until 2005. Now, what's happened is, what can I say? Our dear friends the Egyptians, their army is rather porous. And Egyptian officers have been, how should I say, induced to let vast quantities of armaments into Gaza. Where do they get all the guns?
Welcome back, America. I'm back with Dr. Michael Oren. His article in Sapir Journal is a must-read, sapirjournal.org, I believe. Yep, sapirjournal.org. Dr. Oren, you and I both know that the number one guy in the Gulf states is MBZ, and the number one guy in Saudi Arabia is MBS. Either or both of them, if they took over Gaza and used their resources, could have a legacy that would endure through the ages. Will either of them do that?
I wouldn't rule it out. I would not rule it out. And why not? Everyone's interested in stability. Both the Saudis and the Emiratis are frightened of Sunni extremism in the form of the Muslim Brotherhood, in the form of ISIS, and in the form of Hamas. They're similarly frightened of Shiite extremism in the form of Iran and Hezbollah. There's only one country in the world that's fighting both of them, and that's Israel. And yes, they'll have an interest in a stable Gaza. Why get dragged into conflict after conflict by Hamas? And so why not cooperate in preventing that from happening? So the inter-Arab force would be an important part of any component, any international force that would take over Gaza. You have to rebuild the infrastructure. They have no infrastructure, water reclamation, desalinization, electricity. You need all of that. Housing, you need all of that. So that they would play a very crucial role. But I think the big question, and the question I struggle with, okay, who are going to be the Palestinians who are going to be in control of Gaza? Right now, according to the polls, 83% of the West Bank Palestinians support Hamas. 65% of the displaced Palestinians in Gaza still support Hamas. All right, so who are you going to put in there? Keeping in mind that we can destroy Hamas, but we can't kill the idea of Hamas, no more than we can kill the idea of ISIS or Al-Qaeda. We can weaken it. We can degrade it a lot. We're going to have to find a Palestinian leadership, and this is going to be very hard, that actually cares more about its own people than it cares about killing our people. And that, really, go find that.
Well, I am reminded that the Emirati Special Forces fought alongside of American Special Forces in Afghanistan for decades. So they've got the ability to police. I don't know that they have the ability to persuade. Do they?
We're not about persuasion here. We're about keeping the peace. Okay, and you're not going to persuade a bad man. You're going to deter a bad man, and that's what it's about. You can't. This talk, and the administration has been talking about moving the PA. Maybe Mahmoud Abbas. Mahmoud Abbas, in the 18th year of his 4-year term, who people forget, exactly 1 month before September 7th, he gave one of the most anti-Semitic speeches in history. Blame the Jews for the Holocaust. There's a leader. There's a presumptive peace partner. And most recently, he has accused the IDF of perpetrating the massacres of October 7th. And now senior officials of the PA are not only praising the atrocities, they're saying, hey, our guys took part in them too. We deserve credit. This is what we're dealing with. So
I've got an exit question. Ambassador Oren, yesterday the White House got ahead of Israel in saying that the pause was going to be extended. If you were the ambassador still, your successor, whoever it is, and I don't know who it is, what should they be saying to the White House today about announcing before Israel that Israel has accepted a deal?
I say hold off. I'd say hold off. You're putting us in a corner by doing that. And you don't want to put us in a corner and make it seem like we're rejecting or we're backing out of an agreement that has already been achieved. That's not it. How should I say this diplomatically? It's not cool to do that.
Did you notice that yesterday, that they had done that? Did that cross?
I was surprised, but the United States came out before Israel did. There's one other point about Gaza that I have to stress about the day after, and that is Israel has to maintain security control. That includes control of the airspace, control of the internet space, and it means hot pursuit. We have to retain the right of hot pursuit because who knows, if we learn that there's a cell that's operating in Khan Yunis and the international force is not interdicting fast enough, our special forces are going to have to do that.
Dr. Oren, it's a fine piece. I hope it's got a link on the web pretty soon. I would encourage everyone to go to Sapir. It's called The Day After. At some point, the fighting will end. What comes next? It's the first time I've seen anyone actually think this through in one place. Good luck. You're in Houston today and then Philadelphia tomorrow. Do you get to go home to Israel after that?
Yeah, Denver.
Denver.
One more stop, Denver.
RescueIsrael.org.
Why is your country so big? Why does it have to be so big? Couldn't they get a little smaller? Really?
When I do radio barnstorming, I don't do that many stops. So good on you, Dr. Oren. RescueIsrael.org. Go and contribute no matter who you are. If you're a friend of Israel, go to RescueIsrael.org. Thank you, Dr. Oren.